My apologies for the delay, good people. As I was getting ready to start, I hit the go live button, and it just took me right back out of StreamYard, and I had to start all over again. So, yay! Good evening, good people. Hi, it's Jason with Green Country Agroforestry. It's Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's time for yet another live stream. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the weird news and trying to put a little bit of the light of reason on it. So you can take a couple things off your list of worries. There's plenty of stuff to be worried out there. Don't worry. There's plenty of stuff to still be worried about. And then a couple of things that we're going to go ahead and have a look at that popped up that seem to be concerning or could be concerning. There's no reason to be concerned over, and we'll get to those. Those two things are aliens and what in the world is it that they're spraying, right? Those two things kind of came up together in conjunction this week in conversation with other people. There's a person in the community that's run into some trouble. I won't bring up their particular troubles. I'm not going to bring up their particular troubles right now. It's their story is their story. I'm not going to tell their story for them. But it did come up that there's a person in the community that has been having some issues. My thoughts on the matter are most likely lack of sleep combined with consuming too much of the wrong kind of conspiracy theory website stuff. Maybe a good vacation might help the individual that's having these troubles break up that pattern of behavior that they're currently involved in, giving them a moment to get a good night's sleep, return their serotonin levels back to normal, and then think about and rationalize what it is that they think they've been experiencing. So let me see. Mary's still driving. Vicky's saying, worry is absolutely no use except to waste your time and energy. Yeah. Worrying without the ability to do anything about it, just sitting here fretting is worthless. You have to ask the question, is it something I can do something about? If it is, then that's one thing. But if it's nothing you can do anything about, what's the point of worrying about it? What is, and you can just make preparations to deal with life as it throws its little curves at you. But we'll start out with the easy stuff. Now, you guys have heard me say before, have I talked about this on this channel before? I can't remember. The idea of aliens coming in to visit us. That's popped up in the news recently. There was a fellow that came on and was talking about how there were craft of non-human origin that had been recovered, that the military was trying to reverse engineer things from those craft. And I believe I have mentioned in passing, it wasn't really a main topic of conversation, how you could take those exact words and use those to describe a spider early in the spring, spinning that silk balloon that it uses to travel about, a craft of non-human origins, if you will. And in fact, DARPA has been very, very seriously attempting to reverse engineer spider silk for applications for military use. So you could make those sorts of claims and they could be true, but that's not what we all want to know. What we all want to know is about those things, right? Those unidentified flying objects. Are there aliens visiting? Could there be a government program with recovered craft? And of course, the whistleblower comes out and says, yes, it's top secret. We're reverse engineering this. There's all kinds of craft, multiple craft, drivers too. We've got all that stuff. And it begins to sound a little odd whenever you have other people chiming in and going, oh, yeah, this guy's credible. This guy's credible. And so now people have this idea in their head, well, maybe there are aliens that are visiting. Maybe they're in communication. And then you have the people that pop up and goes, yeah, I can hear the voices of the aliens. They're communicating with me. They're telling me that everything's going to be okay. You just got to love each other, guys. And it's weird. Weird stuff going on out there. So let's tackle the alien visitors question real quick. We live in a lovely little solar system, 8 planets. Used to be 9, then they reclassified one of them as a planetoid instead of a planet. I'm a little bit miffed. I stand with Pluto. It's a great place to live, especially here on the 3rd planet. Everywhere else in the solar system doesn't really seem to be great for humans to live, but the 3rd planet is pretty decent for us. You can imagine what it would be like if it were necessary to leave our homes and travel to another solar system somewhere in our galaxy. Hopefully, before we made the trip, we would know that there was a habitable planet there. Hopefully, there's always a possibility that we could make that trip kind of blind and just launch with everything we needed to start a colony and just sort of hope that there was something there to settle on when we got there. And then if there wasn't, then what do we do? Turn around and come back, keep going? It would be trouble. It would definitely be trouble. Now, what about a craft that was coming in to visit us? I'm going to make a couple of assumptions about alien craft. First of all, we're going to assume that there are aliens and they do exist. All right. Wow. Big speculation. However, I like to think that in a universe this size, anything is possible. And that's also one of the problems. In a universe this size, it's an awful, awful long way from here to the next solar system. And we personally don't happen to know if any of the worlds in that next solar system are habitable or not. A long way, several light years distance to get from there to here. But before you get to here, before a craft, assuming this is an alien intelligent species, spacefaring, let's go ahead and give them some benefit of the doubt. Let's assume that their technology is better than ours. So our technology allows us to send a craft that we build and send out into space at the fastest speed that we've been able to get one to go so far, and it's, I assume, still accelerating, about 1/20th the speed of light. That's fast. That's very fast. Let's assume that our alien visitors have the ability to accelerate to twice that speed, and we'll say that they can do that instantaneously, even though that would probably turn them into a grease spot on the wall of their ship. But they've got special magical technology that stops that from happening too. They can accelerate to 1/10 the speed of light, and they can decelerate just as quickly. So they could make the trip from, say, the Oort cloud all the way out there 2 light years away from us here on Earth to Earth. They can make that journey at 1/10 the speed of light. Now, the reason that they wouldn't be coming in at full light speed and going screech, stopping in front of our planet is, well, among other things, the Oort cloud, which is this wonderful little cluster of objects 2 light years away from Earth. It's way, way out there. About 100 billion objects or more. We don't really know exactly. It's kind of hard to count. They're way out there. They're not all very large, and most of the time when we see one, it's whenever it makes an erratic orbit that comes close to the inner solar system, then comes back out, and these little ice balls are called comets whenever they do that. Like I said, 100 billion or more objects out there, and slamming into one of those at relativistic speeds would immediately stop your space exploration. So before you approach the solar system, you will want to slow down to less than light speeds so you can see where you're going before you get there, so you don't slam into something and go and become a cosmic dust spot. So we've got our aliens. They're smart. They know they need to slow down before they come to a planet. They slow down. They approach our Oort cloud. They get here. They're 2 light years away. They're traveling at 1/10. Once they get here, they're going to travel at 1/10 of the speed of light, which means that it will take them about 20 years to get here from the time that they slowed down out of their special magic, I can travel faster than the speed of light transportation system they're using. It now takes them 20 years to go from the Oort cloud to Earth to get here. Now, I'm going to make another assumption here. I'm going to assume that they know what electricity is. I'm going to assume they probably use some. They're probably not warping space with their minds. They're most likely using some kind of an engine technology. They may even have some sort of computers or things like that on board. And this is something interesting about electricity that you'll discover if you move out to these remote areas and watch thunderstorms and turn the radio on because you want to know whether or not it's time to seek shelter. Whenever lightning strikes, the radio experiences static. And this is because of the fact that whenever electrons are traveling across an area, an air gap, they produce or propagate a radio wave. And so that radio wave competes with the radio signal from the surrounding radio stations that are broadcasting, and you hear that fuzz or static coming through on the radio. But incidentally, you'll hear the same fuzz or static when the compressor on your refrigerator kicks on, because all it needed was for electrons to have to make a jump across an air gap. And whenever electrons make a jump across an air gap, they create a radio wave. Now, the reason this is important is because radio waves travel at approximately the speed of light. So, our alien spacecraft slows down to below light speed as it approaches the Oort cloud 2 light years away from Earth, so they don't turn into a bug on a windshield, so to speak, relatively speaking, traveling faster than the speed of light or at the speed of light and hitting an ice ball, not a good thing. So they slow down. Now they're going to make the transit from there to Earth, and we're going to assume that their technology allows them to speed up and slow down instantaneously, even though that's not something we can do. We're going to give them magic powers, right? Magic. They can get to 1/10 of the speed of light, and they can slow down just as easily. So they're going twice as fast as anything we've ever made. Oh, incidentally, Voyager will not reach the Oort cloud for another 300 years, even though it has actually left our solar system, and it won't be out of the Oort cloud for another 30,000 years. Just a little touch the ground and get in contact with reality here. Space is big. It's really, really big. It's even bigger than Earth, and Earth is bigger than you thought it was too. Okay, so they're traveling, and they're using energized electrical equipment. They're not just drifting without any sort of power or propulsion, and they're probably not using strictly chemical propulsion either. Good chance they're probably using something like what we've developed, an ion propulsion system, which of course is going to create radio frequencies. Even if they're not broadcasting radio frequencies as communications, light speed communications, even if they're not using that, they are going to be producing, if they're using any kind of energized equipment at all, they are going to be producing radio frequencies, which can be detected here on Earth. And they will arrive here within 2 years after they got to the Oort cloud. So assuming that they didn't travel at slower than light speed, slow down. Okay, now we're going to go enter the solar system. If they did this very long way of traveling, the way we humans would do it, then we would have known about them coming for hundreds of years. Well, at least once we started picking up radio signals, we'd know about it. And that would be hundreds of years. That hasn't happened. They haven't been here yet. Now, here's the thing. Since the 1980s, we've had a program on Earth called SETI, S-E-T-I, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Now, I know a little bit about this because I used to donate money to them. I also used to donate computer space to them. This is back in the early days, whenever we were disconnecting America Online, that sort of thing. The internet was brand new. It was like, hey, could you share some of your computing power with SETI so that SETI can interpret all of the signals that SETI is receiving on its multiple radio telescope arrays. These are supermassive radio telescope arrays all around the planet. And it's a lot of data coming in. And they want to be able to interpret that data and make sure that that's not something terrestrial. It's something that's coming from outside. Is it a pulsar? Is it a quasar? Is it something else? And they've done tests with various probes that have traveled far out into the solar system. Not so long ago, there was one that broadcast back from Mars. The signal that they were able to pick up indicated that, yeah, if this had been an alien, if this had been somebody who was traveling here, we would have picked up that signal and we would have known about it. So if our SETI is completely 100% privately funded, it's not in the pocket of governments. It's ordinary schmucks like you and me, scientists, citizens, people who are interested in the topic and asking the question, are we alone out there? And SETI has been very, very diligently searching for that answer and listening to the cosmos for any indication of a radio frequency coming from beyond the immediate vicinity of Earth. And the reason we haven't heard much from them, and the reason they haven't appeared in the news very much, is because there's been nothing to report. Sorry, no momentary spark gap transmissions whenever you clicked on the cryogenic freezers, whenever you started to make your transit into the inner solar system. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing yet. And here's the funny thing. If we were to get that signal, I would get an email because I'm on the list to get emails because of donations and stuff like that. It wouldn't go to the email I'm currently using. It'd go to my old email address. So I probably wouldn't know about it. But I would also get phone calls from people who are also very, very interested in the subject and monitoring. And somebody would want to talk to me about this. Like, hey, Jason, they actually picked up another wow signal. It's awesome. I'm like, well, is this one, somebody leaving their microwave on, or is this one for real this time? And, we'd have that particular conversation. Fun stuff. And then after us eggheads and people with the glasses and the pocket protectors got done talking about how fun and exciting and interesting, and can we translate? Is it a language? Do they have a language? What do they look like? Can we get one of our telescopes, to point in that direction and get some pictures of them, maybe in 10K, because we can do that streaming live from telescopes in very, very high definition. There's no chance whatsoever that an alien craft would be able to make it as far as Earth without us knowing about it. And then we would have the trouble of trying to tell our governments that there was an alien ship approaching. That would be fun. Based upon everything that we experienced so far, trying to tell our governments important things like this, it's usually about 1 to 3 months before we get to see somebody to let them know that, hey, oh, by the way, there's something approaching. It'll be here in about 18, 20 years or so, give or take. Appears to be intelligent. We don't know where it came from, but it's not from here. And, eventually they'll catch up. From this point on, they might try to hide this information from the public, but here's the problem. The genie's already out of the bottle. We're the ones that told them about there being aliens. So you see how this works, right? The guy who comes out and goes, oh, yeah, I'm from a secret government project. We have recovered alien craft. There's been aliens visiting. Y'all didn't know about it all this time. Complete and total BS. How in the world would the government know if we didn't tell them? So that's one you can take off your list. It hasn't happened. It's probably not going to happen. If it does, I'll be surprised. I'll be very happily surprised, unless, of course, it's hostile aliens that are here to conquer us or something like that. Eat our brains or something. In that case, I won't be very happy. But I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised. Moving on, item number 2. Wow, that only took 15 minutes. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? There we go. Definitely don't panic. Yeah, I was thinking about putting the electronic thumb up there, but I decided not to. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. It's like who is it that wants to put out this alien craft business, and what purpose does it serve? And I've been speculating about that for off and on for years and years. I figured a while back that mainly they wanted people to think that there were aliens because it was easier to just say aliens, and then laugh at the people who saw things in the sky and then go, yeah, well, there's an experimental aircraft that we're working on. It has a novel propulsion system. It doesn't use jets. It actually uses charged ions, and it moves through the atmosphere. Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, we actually have that. You can go to actually on YouTube and see one of those flying around. MIT built one. Arthur C. Clarke, is that not? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Yeah. Yeah, so see, the problem is a lot of us are watching Star Trek and Farscape? Farscape, I think. Farscape, Star Trek, the Orville. The Expanse actually was a fairly decent one because it's a little bit closer to real physics. These shows, the science fiction shows that we watch, they're fun, and they're a great way to introduce novel concepts and ideas well ahead of the point where we might reach some sort of technology that approximates these things. So it is useful in that respect. But mostly our science fiction programming is fantasy. It's fantasy disguised as science fiction because the actual science is not there. It's just using science as a substitution for the magic wand or for the genie or for the magical stone, the elfin magic, the dragon that grants the wish, whatever it is, whatever fantasy element it is. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke. Whatever fantasy element it was, they're using science as the rationale for it instead of the wizard cast a spell. So we get to see on the TV where the Starship Enterprise is traveling through the galaxy, and it's not going instantaneously. It takes a while to get places. But when it approaches a star system, it pulls up, and in just minutes, it's cruising right by. In reality, if you attempted to do that, the very first piece of dust that you encountered would destroy your ship at those speeds. But they have shield technology in Star Trek, which also just doesn't make one heck of a lot of sense either. Vicky is saying, in her opinion, our understanding of the interactions of the electromagnetic fields is neonatal. I suspect most of it has been suppressed. I don't know. One thing I do know, though, is, uh, we're going to have some interesting times if we ever do get off this planet and travel elsewhere. And it's fun to speculate about that stuff. All right. So, item number 2. What in the world are they spraying? This is a big one. I run into this. I run into this actually an awful lot. Homesteader, a lot of homesteaders believe in chemtrails. Chemtrails are real. They're spraying stuff. It's falling out of the sky. Look, they're trying to change the atmosphere. Yeah, been going on for a while, right? This goes back to, sometime in the 1980s, if I'm not mistaken, whenever they're first starting to do this. It's called geoengineering. The idea came about during the time period, and this is why I'm thinking it was in the 80s, pre-90s, because I don't recall exactly when they conducted the first experiments. Let me organize my thoughts for a moment here. Chemtrails, yes. They thought the planet was warming back then. They were talking about global warming. Incidentally, in the 1970s, they were talking about global cooling and expecting the coming ice age. In the 1980s, they said, it must be global warming, and they started getting worried about warming. Then they had an explosion with Mount Pinatubo, I believe, which was, it was 85. Might have been after that. I don't recall. It's been a while. Maybe 85 was Mount St. Helens. In any case, following a volcanic eruption, they noticed a general cooling of the climate in the subsequent year and went, aha, this must be from that big volcanic eruption over there. Yes. Although there have been other big volcanic eruptions in the past, whenever there wasn't subsequent cooling, they're going, well, maybe it's connected. We just don't know how. So the idea that got introduced was that whenever a volcano erupts, if it has sufficient force, it can send its ejecta, those little particulates, up to the stratosphere. The stratosphere, incidentally, begins 10 kilometers up. The area between there and here is called the mesosphere. The mesosphere is where most of the oxygen that we breathe is, from here to the top of the mesosphere. It's kind of thin up there. You probably wouldn't want to try to go up there and do anything. I'm not going to say you'd implode, but you wouldn't breathe very well. We'll put it that way. Mount St. Helens, or not Mount St. Helens, Mount Everest is below the top of the mesosphere, and you don't go up to the top of that without oxygen tanks. So anyway, the idea is these particulates, they get way up there where the air is very, very thin, and here where the air is very, very thin, since the air is very thin, it hasn't been able to absorb heat yet. When the sun's rays strike that sulfur dioxide, because it's very reflective, white vaporous stuff, very reflective, it bounces the light back off, and it doesn't get the opportunity to be diffused within the atmosphere and transfer its energy in the form of heat to the atmosphere, so it doesn't warm the atmosphere. So the idea was sulfur dioxide and other fine particulate matter ejected from volcanoes would provide a cooling effect. And so they decided they were going to test that and conduct experiments. Well, the news of those experiments, that these experiments were being conducted, got out. People learned about them. And some of them were excited to find out what the results were going to be. And some of the people were kind of worried about, what's going to happen if they start dispersing things in the atmosphere, blocking the sun. That could be bad. They're a little bit worried about that. And to this day, people claim that every time they see lines crisscrossing in the sky, that there's chemtrails, they're spraying stuff, that's what it is, and they're absolutely certain of it. Even though people will tell them that superheated air coming from the exhaust of jets interacting with very, very cool, moist air in the upper atmosphere, and large amounts of space in between particles creates very, very large amounts of space in these contrails, but they're still insisting that they're spraying something. Yeah, year without a summer, Vicky is mentioning in the comments down there. And of course, we know what happened in the year without a summer. The year without a summer, we have a change in our solar activity cycle, solar cycles. As a matter of fact, every single time it's a change in solar cycles, solar activity. There may have been earthquake and volcanic activity also, but the solar activity was always the linchpin. In any case, we heard about them intending to do these experiments, spraying stuff in the stratosphere. Sulfur dioxide actually is what they first started out spraying, because that's the stuff that comes out of the volcanoes that was speculated to be the cause of what they thought was the volcano-induced cooling. But after they conducted the experiment, what you wouldn't have heard about, because it wasn't really big news, was that it was mostly a dud. Mostly a dud. They sprayed sulfur dioxide at the stratosphere at a great expense, sprayed a large amount of it, and then measured to see how long it would stay up there and if it would actually be a viable means of cooling the planet. And they discovered that although, yeah, some of those particulates do stay in the atmosphere, in the upper atmosphere for years. I mean, years, just zipping around. They discovered that most of them settled out of the atmosphere within a week, and the vast bulk of them settled out within the first couple of days, to the point where if you did a geoengineering covered the sky with sulfur dioxide to block the sun, you could get 1 or 2 days worth of cooling. Now the question is, would it be worth doing? And this is where I decided I was going to have some fun, because, well, I'm built that way. So 1 mole, this is the amount that you need to be able to measure any of it at all. 1 mole of sulfur dioxide is actually a fairly large quantity. It's about 22 liters, but it only weighs 64 grams. It's not much in mass. Human beings produce, I'm going to be generous and say 2,000 tons of sulfur dioxide during the course of a year. It's not all produced and captured, mind you. A lot of it goes out the smokestack and up into the air. That's the byproduct of burning coal for fuel, for electricity to run your electric cars. You have to burn coal for the electricity to run your electric car that uses a strip mined mineral for a battery that can't be recharged, that came from underneath a rainforest that was clear cut so you could have your electric car. Anyway, sulfur dioxide is produced when you burn coal. It's the sulfur in the coal goes into the atmosphere. It creates acid rain when it interacts with ozone. But other than that, we do produce about 2,000 tons of it every year. They are able to recapture some of that, which is kind of cool. It doesn't turn into acid rain. But we don't make a whole lot. So we'd have to find someplace to come up with a bunch more sulfur dioxide, because I calculated how much it would take to cover our planet in a blanket of sulfur dioxide, 1 centimeter thick, just 1 centimeter thick. That's all, 1 centimeter. I don't think a 1 centimeter thick layer of sulfur dioxide is going to block much sunlight, but it's enough to say we covered it with a layer. Cover the planet with 1 centimeter layer of sulfur dioxide up there at the very lowest points of the stratosphere. So just 10 kilometers up, where most of our aircraft don't go anyway. So if we're going to do this, we'll have to build additional aircraft to get there. We'll have to build the aircraft to do this, because we want to disperse this worldwide. We want to actually get a cooling effect, right? We're not just going to experiment now. We're actually going to go for it. We're going to make it cooler by spraying stuff, reflecting the sunlight. Geoengineering. Great job. We have to build the planes for it. We don't have enough. We're also going to have to find a fuel source for them. It's going to take a lot of planes. It's going to take a lot of fuel. We're talking bankrupting nations in order to come up with the fuel and the planes to do this. And you're going to love how long it lasts, because pardon me, I need to go let the ducks back into their duck hut. All right, you're going to love this. In order to get that 1 centimeter thick layer of sulfur dioxide all the way around the planet, takes 21,800,000 tons of sulfur dioxide. So every 15 to 20 years, we could take all of the sulfur dioxide that mankind has managed to produce, bankrupt all the nations on the planet to get it up there into the lower edges of the stratosphere and spread it all around the planet, and would provide at maybe about a half degree of cooling tops for 1 or 2 days every 15 to 20 years. So, guys, you don't have to worry about chemtrails. It's not happening. What is happening is atmospheric research, but you're much more likely to see a low altitude crop duster at work than you are to see an atmospheric research project going on in the skies near where you live. I'm not saying that you didn't see one. It's just whenever you hear hoofbeats, it's not zebras. Chances are it's most likely going to be horses. So once again, this is another thing. You don't need to worry about this. It's not something that is going on. It's not something that is happening. It really isn't. Now, ironically, I hear that the Biden administration is interested in investing a large amount of money in the upcoming fiscal year on research projects which involve, shocker of shockers, geoengineering. So they're going to blow through a whole lot more money to go and find out that particulates in the upper atmosphere don't hang around long enough to cause any significant atmospheric changes whenever we introduce them. It's already been done. But we can do it again. We can do it again. We can spend that money. It's a good way to spend money. Or something. All right. So that's the weird news. Was there any other weird news? That was the weird news that really popped out to me. So, okay, guys. Any other weird news that you guys have heard about that you might want me to opine about? I could start showing you links and stuff for abstracts and scientific journals and all the good stuff, if you like. But one of the things that came out of that original experiment in geoengineering, the fact that the particulates don't actually hang in the atmosphere so long, it caused me to ask that one question. It's like, okay, hang on a second. So, and we're not talking about just sulfur dioxide, other particulates as well, fine ash and things, dust. So if that's the case, if these particles don't actually persist in the atmosphere long enough to have a significant effect, then it would stand to reason, of course, that the impact 65 million years ago, Chicxulub, 10-kilometer wide asteroid hits the Earth near Yucatan, throws a big cloud of stuff up in the air, dust and ash. Guys, remember this one? Impact winter, blocks the sunlight, kills the dinosaurs. It's too cold. Except the particles don't stay in the atmosphere long enough to do that, which tells us there was something else that killed the dinosaurs. And so that got me thinking about what it was. And I paid attention to the fossil record, which things went extinct before other things. And I noticed there was a lag between the animals in the oceans and the animals on the surface. And the reason there's a lag between the animals in the oceans and the animals on the surface is because the things that allow gases to go into solution in water and the things that allow gases to come out of solution in water, the laws that apply to the laws of physics we're talking here, that apply to gases coming into and going out of solution are such that something that affects the surface atmosphere is going to have an almost immediate effect. But it's going to take much, much longer for that effect to be felt in the oceans, because although there is a direct relationship between gas in solution and gas in the atmosphere, it is not a direct one-for-one relationship. In other words, if you produce a molecule of CO2 here in the atmosphere, it doesn't automatically get absorbed by the ocean. If you produce a molecule of oxygen in the ocean, it doesn't automatically go off into the atmosphere. You have to have variances in temperature and pressure to cause gases to come into and go out of solution. So the the change will happen, but it'll happen much more slowly and much more gradually in the oceans. The oceans will carry on um, much better, especially considering that, once again, most of the oxygen made in the ocean by the zooplankton that live in the ocean, most of that oxygen is used by marine life. And it was the same back then as it is now. I mean, that relationship hasn't changed. So something comes along, strips the atmosphere off the surface of the planet. A whole bunch of really big critters that have to be able to get a lot of oxygen whenever they breathe in, all of a sudden can't get enough oxygen circulated all the way to their extremities because they are very, very large creatures and they have a hard time surviving. A very, very, very hard time surviving. Meanwhile, in the oceans, because gases don't leave solution that rapidly, there is outgassing occurring in the oceans after this evacuation of pressure here. There's outgassing occurring, but it's not a medium. It's at a regular pace trying to reach an equilibrium. So going on for years and years and years afterwards, the oceans are still living mostly the way they were, and eventually they get to the point where some of the larger critters can't survive anymore. And you see die off in the oceans. Oklahoma Chicken Can is saying Bernoulli was right. And Mary's saying that explains the T-Rex. Yeah, right here. We have this animal. When we examine it, we go, okay, now how does this work? We see how the skeleton may have gone together. We can see how big the rib cage is. We can see where he has got the space for his lungs, and we can see what the lung capacity is. But how in the world did this animal manage to actually survive and function? It can't in today's atmosphere. It couldn't possibly survive in today's atmosphere. But at a previous time when we had more dense atmosphere, then yes, it could have. This may be a problem that we would have trying to bring back mammoths, incidentally. They might possibly be able to survive if they're being made half elephant, but the old original mammoth, the Columbia mammoth, big critter, it died off a while back. And I think part of the reason it died off is because being a big critter and having the inability to circulate oxygen to its extremities whenever it's trying to survive in a much more, a much less dense atmosphere, we'll say, may have caused it to be weakened. Not necessarily killed it off entirely, but caused it to be weakened. Just like whenever we get old and our circulation isn't quite so good, and maybe our lungs are clogged up, and maybe our arteries are starting to harden, and it's harder for our circulatory system to get oxygen to our tissues because of constrictions. Well, imagine if there's less oxygen to begin with. And of course, it doesn't automatically kill you, but it does weaken you to the point where you can't run as hard or as long or fight as hard. And if you have humans who are hunting you and you can't defend yourself very well against them because now everything that you do is an effort, you're on your way to extinction. And that is most likely what happened to the mammoths. T-Rex, I don't know how many of them were ever, really. Like I said before, there were 5 skeletons that were intact. That's based upon the last time I had read about it. I went and refreshed my memory, and well, not my memory, refreshed my knowledge base, because there have been more skeletons found since then. But intact ones, not very many. So our planet has undergone some changes, and now much smaller creatures are living and occupying the spaces that larger creatures used to occupy. And the reason that smaller creatures are doing this is because of that change in atmosphere. Yay! Gabriel Sheep is talking about it. Yeah, less oxygen, somewhat altitude sickness, depends on how quickly it happens, and time needed to produce extra blood cells to Yeah, well, if we're talking about a sudden and rapid evacuation of atmosphere, to the point where in some places you would have animals flash frozen from that evacuation of atmosphere, that's not a whole lot of time to make some adaptations. In the case of humans, if we're trying to train ourselves to work at higher altitudes, we can build ourselves up to it, to the point where you could get up and your first day trying to do it, if you were going to go up and visit, say, Pumapunku in the Andes, I certainly wouldn't be able to do it at my current age and state of health. But whenever I was younger, it would still wear me out if I tried to do it. But if I was doing that trip, if I was going up into the mountains every day, getting myself used to it, building the extra blood cells and everything else that goes along with it, yeah, eventually I'd be able to get up there. Would I be able to work and move heavy stone blocks around at that altitude? Yeah, maybe not. But once again, at the far distant pass, at a certain point, our atmosphere was denser. And perhaps that is when those constructions were done. Of course, that would date them to sometime prior to 12,800 years ago. That just blows the theory about their age out of the water, because they're supposed to only be a few thousand years old, or less than 2,000 years old, I think. My apologies for just sitting here and sweating. I do have the air conditioner on behind me. Oh, actually, that feels pretty good. But it's over 99 degrees here in Oklahoma today, and I am just glowing, and my shirt is slowly transforming from a light gray to a dark gray for reasons that will be pretty obvious if you think about it for a moment. All right. Vicky is saying some people have proven themselves unable to adapt to thin atmosphere. Well, yeah, if you're not in good health to begin with, you're not going to be able to handle it. It's rough. Coca helps with the altitude sickness. Yeah, the locals chew the leaves of that plant, and it helps them out a bit. Oh, so on to gardening. I've got an invisible plant here. Let me turn off the green screen. I'll show you what I've got. Turn back. There we go. All righty. So I've got a little plant here. Actually, several little plants. So what we've got here is a regular vase from the dollar store. So it costs us $1.25. A black plastic trash bag, and a tie from a loaf of bread. Filled it up with water. And then we took our mint plants, which were just growing prolifically and spilling out into the walkways. And I trimmed off some of that stuff that was growing out there and stripped off the lower leaves. We put those over to the side. We're going to make that into tea or something. But this was about 3 days ago. And I just stuck them down here with the water. And this is one of the plants that you can do this and get away with it. You have a look right down there. You see the tiny little roots starting to form. Only 3 days. That's all it takes. That's all it takes to get mint to grow from cuttings. And these are particularly long cuttings. I figure if I had more stem length, there might be more roots. More roots means they might transplant better whenever I get around to transplanting. But you don't need to have this much length. Just a tiny little sprig. As long as you can get at least a couple of these nodes along the length of the stem immersed into some water. Water is all it takes, but you do want to have the root zone someplace dark. So wrap a t-shirt around it, or use a plastic trash bag, or use a dark container. Any way you want to do it. Have it dark so the plant knows that it's supposed to be making roots. And it usually only takes a few days for them to start forming. I'm going to go ahead and get these put back down in here. And by the end of the week, we'll be able to take these and move them around to new locations, particularly in the border areas where that wonderful peppermint smell, which is so nice to me, will help repel the gophers. We're trying to keep them from moving back in. We've caught 2 of them so far. Not seeing a whole lot more gopher activity either. So hopefully we caught them before they reproduced, and maybe I can stop more gophers from moving in if I can get the entire border protected by a hedge of peppermint, because rodents don't like it. And if a gopher's digging along and happens to hit that, it's going to smell it and may think, I don't like this area, I'm going to move on, and I'm not going to investigate it any further. And then, of course, we have castor beans growing, which also are useful for deterring the rodents. and such. So let me get this green screen turned back on. You see it rippling in the background behind me. Let's use that one. There we go. Got my little gnomes looking over my shoulder. Let's see what Oklahoma Chicken Cam is saying. Younger dryas impact hypothesis promoted by the Comet Impact Group and Randall Carlson. Yeah, Carlson seems the best probability to have this time. Yeah, well, there had to be something that triggered that change, because we were headed out of the ice age, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just soared right back into it. And of course, there were humans on the planet at this time. There were human civilizations on the planet at this time, 12,800 years ago. There isn't a whole lot of written history from that time period, but there's certainly stories that were told. And there's stories that were told all around the world from that time period. And so we can take some of those stories and go, well, maybe that engine over there is lying, but that tribe and 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 that tribe over there, they're all telling the same story or variations of the same story. And if we take that and we match it up to what these people on the other side of the world were telling at the same time, they also tell a story that tells us something about what was happening in the world, how the climate was changing, how things were going on. Katie is just coming in and joining us. Always up. I know, right? That's why I moved that's why I started moving these to 8:30 at night. I used to do them at 7, and then I moved them to 8 a while back. And I figured I'll just keep them at 8:30. I'd go later, but people have to go to bed, including me. Today was not a great day for being outdoors in Northeast Oklahoma, and tomorrow's not going to be much better. Like I said, 99 degrees and hot, muggy. Of course, it's hot. It's 99 degrees. I meant to say is humid. I'm looking at the gauge on my wall. Currently indoors, 9:15 at night, 9:15, 9:20. It is 78% relative humidity, and indoors with the air conditioner going 85 degrees. Yeah, it's miserable out here. It is just miserable. Oh, better look out. The Garden Dome Liberation Front might be coming for you. Oh, yeah, it's just wretched out here. But all this heat is making the Bottle House Gorge grow like crazy. All this heat and the rain that we've been having. We didn't get any today. We didn't get any yesterday. I think we might have gotten a little tiny bit, a very, very little bit early this morning, just a little sprinkling. And we might get some more of that sometime in the early morning in between now and tomorrow morning. We might get a little sprinkle. But the humidity certainly hasn't hurt us as far as plant growth is going, or as far as plant growth is concerned. And of course, the heat is great for growing plants as well. The bottle gourds are going nuts. The sweet potatoes are growing nuts. The Jerusalem artichokes are stretching higher and higher and higher up there. They haven't started to flower yet, but no doubt they're making lots and lots of tubers underground. And the gophers tried them. Before we got rid of the gophers, I think we may have actually got rid of the gophers. Knocking on wood. Before we caught the gophers that I caught earlier this year, we had a grand total of 4 of the Jerusalem artichoke plants get killed off. We lost a couple more than 4, but only 4 of them were killed off by gophers. The rest of them were killed off by me planting them in places that they probably shouldn't have been planted. That way, it was not good spots for them. So they ate. It was two separate instances of Jerusalem artichoke eating by gophers. Somebody came along, ate one, and then later on ate another one, and then they never came back. And then another set, somebody came along, ate one, and then ate another one, and then never came back. It's as if the gophers tried out the Jerusalem artichokes, and maybe the gophers have the same issue that some of us humans have. Pardon me, I just saw that. Oy. Sorry, I had a little splinter in my knuckle I picked up earlier today. It's been bothering me, and I picked up, I held up my hand. I saw the light glinting off it. I just had to pull it out. All right, so perhaps the gophers are having the same issue that we humans are having, which is whenever we eat Jerusalem artichokes, if we don't necessarily have the necessary gut flora to handle the digestion of them, it can give us really bad gas. And after that kind of an experience, maybe the gopher didn't want to try those again. Uh, there are ways that you can prepare Jerusalem artichokes so it doesn't cause you a gastrointestinal discomfort. But eating them raw is going to be kind of hazardous, especially if you're a gopher. So, on the bright side, you might wind up getting some of your tubers eaten by gophers early on, growing Jerusalem artichokes. But if you plant enough of them, don't worry. The gophers are going to give up trying to eat them, and you'll be able to get the rest. Oh no, Vicky is reporting here that deer seem to like the taste of potato foliage. Oh no. Well, that's no good. We always have problems growing potatoes. If I try to put them in the spring, we're going to wind up with one of these springs where we gallop straight into summer within the first 60 days, and potatoes take more than 60 days to mature. So we get above 80 degrees on a regular basis, and the potato doesn't want to produce anymore. I mean, they hit like 85 or so, and they go, "Okay, I've had it. It's the summer. I'm done." So we can't consistently grow potatoes, at least not now. When I was a kid, we could, but that's climate change. Perhaps 20 years from now, we'll be back to being able to plant potatoes in spring and get them just fine. In the meantime, we plant them in the fall, and sometimes hit and miss, we can get potatoes in the fall. For Oklahoma, potatoes not the best crop. If you want a root storage crop for Oklahoma, try sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes work fairly consistently here. You know you're going to get enough hot days for the sweet potatoes to make. So, Katie is asking, what can one use horseweed for? I've got a bumper crop down the hill a ways. If by horseweed, we're talking about mare's tail that has a single stalk and has just radiating leaves that shoot straight out of it all the way up to the top. Gets to be about 5, maybe 6 foot tall sometimes. That particular one, it's good for turning clay into silt. That's about it. It absorbs silica hydrates, puts them into its cellular structure. Whenever it decomposes, they turn to dust. So I don't know. I don't know what purpose it serves. Other than that, maybe that's what it does. Maybe that's what it's for. Is to take, 8 foot tall. They've been growing a while. So they can almost turn into little trees. But as far as I can tell, that's what it's for. It's to take clay and turn it into silt. And it's easier to grow things in silt than clay. Best I could know. Pavlov sheep is saying male urine poured into tunnels pisses them off. Male gopher urine or male human urine? Maybe male human urine. Yeah. So the plan is we plant these lovelies, this invisible plant, the peppermint all the way around. in the hopes that that will stop incursions of gophers whenever they get here and you start trying to dig. They smell that and go, I don't like the smell of that. And then we're going to have, um, castor beans, Racinius communis, and these are growing a lot better than I had any business hoping. Um, the seeds are pretty cool to look at. I got a small number of them, and I went around and planted them in key locations. But if one or two of these comes up, then I'll call it a victory. We'll get some seeds, and we'll wash, rinse, and repeat the next year, and the next year, and the next year, until I've got castor bean in every corner of the yard, growing in every season. Whenever it's time for us to do the thing, we just take out a few seeds, toss them into the gopher trail, into the gopher tunnels, and that the smell of the castor beans hopefully will make them not want to come around either. So multi-pronged attack, trying to grow our way out of a gopher issue. Meanwhile, we're transforming the soil. Um, we're getting really close to that special magic point. I've seen videos where people are going through and touring food forests of a certain age. The really early young ones, it's not all that impressive. You still have a lot of grass. Um, the trees are tiny, and everything isn't really there yet. There's a certain point where things just start to click, and the landscape changes. Where before you may have had some disturbed land, plains, grasslands, scrub, whatever it was, whenever you got started. Typically, residential areas are not forests. They weren't built and designed to be forests. They're built and designed for putting a box with a lid on it that people live in. Anyway, there's a certain point that you'll see watching these videos where, wow, everything's suddenly starting to work, right? Look at that. All the pests are now under control. Look at that. Everything's growing nice and green and lush. Look at that. Isn't the soil great? And been looking for that particular magic moment to happen for a couple of years now, and it looks like we're actually starting to get closer to that to that magical moment. Um, there's some places on the outskirts, on the edge, where we're not in shade most of the time, that are still trying to be grasslands, and they're growing a bumper crop of grasshoppers. Um, Last year we had really bad grasshoppers. I got to tell you, it was a bit scary actually. I'm gonna go ahead and put that horrible locust up there on the screen again. Last year it was a little bit scary, and I recalled from earlier in the year that Patera at the Appalachia Homestead got a picture of a really big, fully mature grasshopper very early in the season. I'm wondering, what the heck is that thing doing there at that time of the year? And of course, we were seeing them emerge and watching them. And I've been kind of following the cycle of blister beetle, grasshopper. Well, you'll have a rise in grasshopper population, then you'll have a rise in blister beetle population, then you have a drop in the grasshopper population, with a subsequent rise in the blister beetle population. Then the blister beetles, not having enough grasshopper larvae to eat whenever they're babies, diminish the number, and you get one or two, and they go away again, and then the grasshoppers come back. I've been following that particular cycle. Last year was a huge uptick in grasshoppers, large numbers of grasshoppers. This year's even worse. As a matter of fact, it's worse this year than it was last year. Last year they got into the corn. They ate the green tassels off of our corn, our first crop of corn of the season. They ate them off. We only got 2, 3, maybe 4 ears that were intact. Most of them were completely and totally wasted. They ate the silks before they got pollinated, so there was no corn at all. There was just the empty cob. That was it. I had the plans to move the ducks out into the corn, but I was late doing it. So the second time around, the second crop of corn, much better. We beat the problem with the grasshoppers, and that's now a fairly regular thing now. We put the grasshoppers out into the corn patch whenever it's up high enough that they won't trample it. They won't eat the corn. As a matter of fact, not only will they not eat the corn, we had high winds not too long ago, which I told you about, over 100 miles per hour. They blew the corn flat. Not all of it, but about half of it got blown flat. And we went around and we propped those corn stalks back up and stuck sticks in the ground to try to keep them up. But there were some that weren't quite as far along as others, not as well developed as others. And I figured, well, I'm not gonna expend all this effort with these little tiny sticks that don't have any indication that they're going to produce anything. So some of them I just left where they were. And now whenever I walk out there, I notice that the ones that were left on the ground continued to grow sideways. And they made ears. And those ears are right down there at duck height. And even though those ears of fresh corn are right down there at duck height, the ducks aren't eating them. They don't have an interest in eating them. The ducks aren't eating. They've got corn down there where they could eat it. They're not eating it. Whenever they're next to wheatgrass, while the wheat is developing, they don't eat the wheatgrass. So you can have ducks with your corn. You can have ducks with your wheat. They can control your pest problems. They can take care of your weed problems for you. And then whenever you're ready to get to the point where you're harvesting your wheat, as you approach that point, you would probably want to move the ducks out because I think they will eat the heads. They might. I've seen a couple that look like they've been worked over. So as they get to that point, as they're passing the milk stage, the whenever you take your seed and you press your thumbnail into it, and break open the seed, as they start to pass that point where you get that milky sap on the seed, that's the point where you move your ducks out. Here's Jason talking about what? Stone fruit, 20 feet away. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's some varieties are more resistant than others. We had a lot of peach leaf curl on our peach tree. All bubbly up earlier in the season, but I went by and I picked off all of those leaves and threw them in the trash, which was a lot of leaves. And now it's looking like it's just going to be fine. But Jasper is saying, I'm so ready to get rid of peaches. I do not see you can grow them organic. Peaches have trouble. Peaches just have trouble. Granddad loved them. And he always made sure he had one around. The one at the old farm was long dead before I came along, but the one at his place that he retired to was still around whenever I was a kid. That thing had issues every year. I mean, constantly every year. But it produced peaches, maybe not a lot, but it made them. Oklahoma is not the best place in the world to grow peaches. They're too sensitive. They're too prone to damage. Also too prone to diseases. But it's peaches, and peaches are delicious. So I've got the one peach tree that I'm going to grow one peach tree. It's doing okay so far. And as our other prunus, as our other stone fruits start developing and getting a little bit more established, we're going to take take scions off of that peach tree and graft them onto all of our stone fruits. So that is cool. Mare's tail tea being good for treating peach curl. We got plenty of mare's tail. And hey, that's a great other purpose for it. That's awesome. Thank you. We'll give that a shot. I wonder if yellow dock or elderberry tea might also be useful in that respect. It is supposed to be fungal in origin. Anyway. I'd have to agree that pears are probably the easiest thing to grow because you don't have to worry about coddling moth. You don't have to worry. I don't think curculio doesn't affect them either. They can grow in bottomland. Fungus doesn't seem to bother them too much. They're fairly hardy otherwise. Um, and they make a lot of sugar. Make a whole lot of sugar. So whenever we have lots of pears, I may eat one or two, and then the rest of it we turn into cider, cider into vinegar, and then vinegar is used for everything else. Last year, Southern Illinois produced more peaches than Georgia. How is that even possible? We've got an orchard here in Oklahoma at Porter, town of Porter, where they grow a lot of peaches, but they do use sprays there. It's not completely organic. Talking about Calhoun County and drought, most likely, right? The drought. Let's see. Yeah. So we have cling and cling free, or freestone. Sorry, cling and freestone is the words that they use to describe how the pit attaches to the flesh of the fruit. And if it's a cling variety, then it means that the pit sticks to the flesh of the fruit whenever you cut it open. And if it's a freestone, that means when you cut the fruit open, you can pull it apart, and the pit just you pull the pit right out. It's not attached. I kind of like freestone for stone fruit, but if it's a choice between no fruit and a cling fruit, I'm going to take the cling fruit. Well, I can eat around a pit. I don't mind. That's what we had with our peach tree this year, incidentally. It was a late frost. I knew the frost was coming, but I was planning on plucking the blossoms off anyway, so I just let the frost take them out. I might do the same thing next year and let the frost kill them, and maybe year after that, third or fourth year after I've got that peach tree, and I might wrap it up whenever the frost is coming to keep some peaches. But at the moment, I'm just worried about letting the thing grow, get its root system established, and be healthy, so that I can harvest scions from it later. I'm going to dismember that poor tree. It'll probably remain a shrub its entire life. The poor thing. That's okay though. You don't want it to get too big. Like I said, the wood's weak and it's prone to disease and damage, and we have bad winds here. So. Anaerobic water. I don't use this as much as I used to. I used to use it a lot, and then I got ducks. Since I got ducks, I haven't used anaerobic compost as much. I still have one. I still have one 30-gallon trash can out there that's full of stuff that's not quite done yet. It'll be done next year. I mean, done to my satisfaction. I like to leave it in there for 2 years before I tap it open. I got some drums I can use in the future that hold up better than the Rubbermaid trash cans. Rubbermaid trash cans just fell apart too quick for me. So we'll try doing a little bit of anaerobic compost in 55-gallon drums from now on instead of the trash cans. But for the most part, I'm not relying on that anymore because of, well, the ducks. The ducks produce so much that I don't really need to use the anaerobic fetid swamp water anymore. And I've been using the duck water as fertilizer for our little seedlings, for our little trees in the nursery area, which is a lot of fun. Just a series of little kiddie pools on the driveway with these green nylon woven sandbags that we put wood chip and peat moss stuff in there, and then transplanted the trees into that. So the trees are not in soil at all; they're in this strata that we put in there, And then we put those into the kiddie pools and fill the kiddie pools to about 2 inches with water. And then whenever it's time to fertilize, I'll take a bucket full of water from where the ducks have been playing around with it for 3 days. It's got chlorophyll in it. It's turning green. It stinks to high heaven. But you pick that up and you pour that into the kiddie pool. It's about 3 or 4 gallons. And then mix it in with enough water to bring the level back up to 2 inches. And now that's all the feed that tree is going to need for at least a month or two. As long as we have 2 inches worth of water at the bottom of those kiddie pools, the roots of the tree are just above where that permanent water is. So they're busy growing out and wicking the water up. Shoot, some of the locust trees are already starting to come through the bags. They grow very vigorously. Mary's thinking, oh no, because those locust trees, last year I put them on the concrete pad of the driveway. I just built a corral of cement blocks around there, threw some peat moss down there, and threw the locust tree transplants into that, and said, okay, if you survive, you survive. If you die, you die. And they survived. They managed to grow the roots, so they found an infinitesimally small crack in the pavement, went through the crack, under the pavement, out the other side, and established a colony all along the side of the house. They're vigorous. They're vigorous and hard to stop. And we've got tons of them. And we'll be happy to sell you some come fall whenever the leaves come off. Oh my. And then we got to figure out how we're going to deal with these guys. I don't know why. You're probably not going to be able to see it. Right there on the tip of my finger, there's a little tiny bug. Oh, it fell off. You can't make any details. I don't know why, but for some reason, I can't let you sit here. I can't let you sit here. Is that another one on my keyboard? It sure as heck is. We've been invaded by these little tiny weevils. That's what these guys are. It's a weevil on my thumb there, crawling across my thumb. So weevils. We've got weevils in the house. And for some reason, they're crawling all over me. They don't appear to be in the corn yet, but I'm going to move everything into the freezer just to be on the safe side. I don't think I want to have. I don't want to have an infestation of weevils. Yeah, weevils love grains. Matthew read the description. Gotta remember where your towel's at. That's right. And the towel's everywhere, right? Everywhere you look, there's stuff that you can use to get through hard times. It really is. I don't know, a while back, I stopped worrying. I really did. Because I know all the wild plants that grow around me. Should something horrible happen, and it became absolutely necessary for me to go and forage for my food, about the only thing I need to worry about is where the meat's going to come from. And there's fishing, there's trapping, there's stuff like that. But ducks are a good thing to have because they can eat your bugs and they can eat your weeds and they give you eggs. And you don't have to kill the duck in order to get the eggs. And they just keep on cranking those out. So although worst comes to worst, I'll be eating an awful lot of duck eggs, and I don't really like eggs all that much, we aren't going to be starving. And there's no need to worry about that. But with all the extra stuff that we've been planning, there's a lot more stuff. A lot more stuff. Gopher meat. There you go. Gopher meat. Maybe not as many gophers for meat, but we have plenty of squirrels. And squirrels will be easy. Oh, yep. I had one infestation of weevils about 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it was in a batch of field corn that I was holding on to. Um, at the time, I was kind of interested in finding out if I could take regular old field corn that you would buy at the feed store. And one, can I plant it? Can I grow it? Because I was doing can I grow that series? Yes, obviously you can plant it, you can grow it. But the other thing is, could you use regular whole or chopped deer corn as an emergency staple in case of emergency? This is a bag, 40, 50 pounds of it costs you anywhere from $5 to $7, right? Maybe about $9 nowadays. But that's a lot of food potentially if it's something that you could eat. Yes, it's not intended for human consumption, right? But if you take it and you screen it, you remove the chaff and the dust, and you're left with the kernels. Can you use that? Can you make hominy out of it? If you can make hominy out of it, can you make tamales or tortillas out of that? And the answer is yes, you can. It's not very good. It's not very palatable, but yes, you could eat it and you could survive on it in a pinch. Our corn is much better to eat and survive on in a pinch. So, if you're looking for a survival corn, I highly recommend Big Horse Spotted Corn, which you can get at www.greencountryagroforestry.com. Get it while supplies last. I think we're down to 16 packs now. Before the latest crop has been harvested and dried in. Until it dries, I can't ship it. It's going to have to dry before I can do anything with it. That means it won't be ready to ship until fall. So until fall, that 16 packs or so is all we've got. Plus what I'm saving for seed myself and keeping the weevils from getting. Because apparently now we have weevils. Yay! Yep. There you go. Ducks and chickens produce protein without having to die. As do dairy animals. Yeah, if you're milking, making cheese is great. Cheese is a great way to preserve milk. I know some people that why are you going to drink the lactate from another mammal? That's just gross. It's milk. It's milk. Milk is good. Let's see. Try rearing nematodes with all the weevils in an aquarium box type deal. In other words, like rearing nematodes to attack the weevils, like using a little biological warfare. I do have an aquarium over yonder. I don't know. I don't even want to keep the weevils that we've got alive. Although just today I've been having them crawling on me for some reason. I think they're somewhere outside. Actually, I know exactly where I'm getting them from. These particular weevils are coming from my redbud trees. Now, I don't know if they're going to affect the corn at all. In all actuality, I think they're just going after the seeds of our redbud trees, because I was out underneath that thing earlier today, and then I found one crawling up the back of my neck, and this was after spending time underneath that redbud. And I think they were dropping out of the redbud and falling on my shirt, and I brought them indoors with me. And so I had that one that I found. There was another one, and then there was one that was crawling its way across the keyboard there. So apparently I tracked them in with me. Hopefully these are just attacking our redbud seeds and not attacking our corn. Hopefully. But quite often we will find redbud seeds that have that hole in them from weevils attacking them. It's okay though. Enough of them still manage to plant themselves and germinate and grow that we'll not run out of redbuds. Although we might run out within the first couple of days that we have them for sale come fall when they go dormant. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think I've got maybe 15 or 20 lined up and ready to go. And about an equal number of black locust. Joe saying, my grandmother always stressed it was necessary to dry corn. Thought it was only for processing, but yeah, well, there's that, and the stuff that we're growing. If we leave the shucks on, if we if we wait until it's all the way dry before we begin pulling the shucks, the moisture that's in there will allow that corn to start to germinate and it'll try to grow. If it was still standing on the plant, it would be growing another plant in midair. Um, I don't know how well that would work, but it would try. So yeah, part of it's preventing fungi, and part of it's also to stop it from trying to germinate and grow. But yep, it's it'll spoil if it gets wet. By golly, so you got to have a good shed to dry your corn in. Also, having a good shed to dry your garlic in and stuff like that too. Sunflower heads, of course, I'm drying those on the front porch because not no particular reason. Is just I think I'm going to put them up here on the porch because I think having sunflowers on the porch is going to be fun. Kind of like whenever I hang corn ears on the porch and let them dry. It's food and it's decoration too. Hey, look at that! We've been going for almost an hour and a half. So anyway, plenty of things to be worried about out there in the world, but being invaded by aliens is not one of them. Also, that means we're not going to be rescued by aliens. So if somebody is telling you that they're hearing from aliens, yes, pray for them. Because it means that they're hearing voices, and typically that's an indication that maybe they're experiencing some schizophrenia, especially if they're thinking that people are flying over their homes, spraying things on them. That's not happening. That's persecutory delusions plus hearing the voices. That's paranoid schizophrenia. That's a trip to a doctor is what it needs, and probably a good night's sleep too. Because I'm imagining that if you've got cargo planes flying over your house at all hours of the night, getting a good night's sleep is going to be kind of hard. And extremes of lack of sleep is whenever you start experiencing the hallucinations. I've been up long enough that reality started to get a little fuzzy around the edges, but never to the point where I was hearing voices or seeing things that weren't there. Maybe minor audio and visual artifacts, not full hallucinations, but just like, you see a spot or a movement or a shadow at the corner of your vision, or you think you heard something that may have been a sound, but you're not really sure. Your brain could interpret it as one thing or the other. Things get a little bit squishy once you've been up for many hours while people are launching high explosive missiles at you. But eventually you get used to it, right? Despite marathon staying up, fearing for my life during the Gulf War, there was one instance where I had a really bad fever. It was a fungal infection in my lungs, very, very bad. So my body was cranking the temperature way too high, and I was sitting about where I'm sitting now. We had a different door on the front door. It was a wood door with the wood grain in it, and so I'm sitting here and I'm just sweating more than I'm sweating right now because it's only in the 90s. My body temperature is probably 103, 104, somewhere around there, trying to burn this infection out. And I looked at the door, and I was consciously aware of the fact that I was having a hallucination. And this is where I'm sitting here going, oh wow, I'm having a hallucination. This is interesting. I'm going to observe this hallucination that I'm having and analyze it. And at the same time, I was getting scared out of my mind because I was looking at the wood grain of this wooden door, and I could see the elementals, the spirits that were trapped in the wood grain, and they're trying to come out. They were unhappy with me because I could see them, and they were trying to come out, and they were moving. And I was looking at this going, this is a hallucination. I know it's a hallucination, but my mind is playing these tricks on me. And if I was not thinking and processing rationally, despite the fact that I'm in an extremely bad situation here, I would be very, very tempted to believe that what I was seeing was some sort of spiritual manifestation. It was something real, that sort of thing. It's very, very disturbing. Um, but if I'm starting to have hallucinations, there's no telling what I'm going to see, because typically what happens whenever you have a person that is a prophet or a shaman or medicine man or a person in this category that is going to go standing out, standing up, going through extreme rituals, extreme fatigue, that sort of thing, trying to get to the point where you begin to have the visions. Whatever it is that you're feeding your mind with is what you're likely to see. So if you're a person that believes in fairies, that there's looking for little elemental spirits all around you, that sort of thing, you get to a point where you're starting to see things and hear things. The things that you will be seeing and the things that you will be hearing are the little people. That's what you're going to encounter, because that's what you've got your mind programmed to accept. It's not necessarily what's there. It's just how your mind's going to interpret the experience you're having. If you're meditating upon angels and demons and things of that nature, and you have these experiences, you're going to experience, hey, guess what? Angels and demons. If you're thinking about UFOs and little green men, you're going to be seeing things in the sky that you think might be alien craft, and you're going to be hearing the channeled voices of beings from beyond the stars. That's the way this works. Whatever you're feeding your mind with, that's what you're going to see whenever you start seeing things due to extreme stress on your system, extreme fatigue, loss of sleep, high fever. And like I said, I'm interested in all of these topics, anthropologically speaking. I want to know what people believe, why they believe it, what's in there that's true, and what's in there that's just something that we can take a lesson from and use ourselves. So walking around shopping all the world religions, going, oh yeah, that works. Let's throw this all in the basket. Okay. Huh. We've come up with a simple set of rules for mankind to follow. Don't murder each other, don't beat each other up, and don't take each other's stuff. Do you think you can manage those three? Hey, great. But do we have to make it a religion? I don't know. Hey, wow. Sunflower flour, the pith from inside, dried and powdered, used as a flour. Interesting. Sunflower stock flour. Hadn't tried it. I don't. We might give it a shot. I'll look into it. Right now, I'm drying out our stocks that I've already harvested so we can make biochar. Matthew saying life is definitely calming. Considering carbon is extremely abundant. Is it? Is it? I don't know. I would like to think so. I look at all the places on planet Earth where you can find life, and we find it at the bottom of the ocean floor in sulfur vents, extremely high temperatures, in hospital conditions. I mean, obviously, we couldn't live there. Most things can't live there, but there are extremophiles, these bacteria that live down there and thrive down there. This is where they want to live, and those bacteria, whenever they die or whenever they complete their life processes, provide a link in the food chain, even down there at the bottom of the depths of the ocean, where other organisms are feeding on them. They feed the cycle of life, and then we have at the poles, underneath the ice, underneath Arctic ice, Antarctic ice, we have microbes and even some invertebrate creatures, worms, living in these extremely cold conditions. So things can live in extreme heat and extreme cold beyond the ranges that you and I are ever going to be comfortable with. And if they can live on those conditions here on Earth, is there a possibility they could live under those conditions elsewhere? I don't see why they couldn't. But do they? And of course, this is why we send probes to Mars, and why we try to find out about other planets. Why we send probes down to the surface of Venus. The Russians actually pulled that one off. They managed to get a few minutes of video before everything failed. But considering the immense heat and pressure that those systems were under to get down to the surface and then take those pictures, actually that's a pretty impressive feat of engineering. So could there be life on other planets or planetoids inside of our solar system? Possibly. Quite possibly. How about elsewhere? Places other than here in our solar system. if there are circumstances similar to what we have on Earth elsewhere in the solar system, I don't see why there couldn't be. Or other than, sorry, outside of our solar system in the rest of the universe, I don't see why there couldn't be. Roll the dice enough times, and you're likely to wind up with life. And I think it is fairly common in the universe. But what if we found out that life was not common in the universe at all? Wouldn't that be a mind scramble? It's like, wow. Only here on planet Earth, right? I don't know. It's hard to imagine a universe that is poor in life, considering that we live on a planet that's so abundant in it. But it might just be that this is the weird exception. Planet Earth is the place where everything happened just right. But we wouldn't really know until we've actually gone to other solar systems out there and explored and found out. So we could theorize and we go, and my personal feeling, yeah, I agree. I think life is very common in the universe, and probably intelligent life is very common in the universe. The problem is, if we're traveling at fractions of the speed of light from point A to point B, our chances of encountering said intelligent life is very slim. We'll be able to travel to the immediate vicinity and back in more time than human civilization has existed. So assuming sometime in our distant past, let's just imagine for a moment, prior to the Younger Dryas impact, we had an advanced civilization on Earth. We launched craft out to go visit the neighboring solar systems, traveling at less than the speed of light, obviously. Those craft go out, they come back, they arrive on Earth. They arrive on Earth to a planet that doesn't remember that it ever sent them. That could be an interesting occurrence. But you would have to believe once more that some things have happened. For example, humans have managed to achieve star travel and then forgot all about it. Not saying it couldn't have, but it's not entirely believable. It's a little bit more believable that humans had the ability to leave Earth's atmosphere at some point in the distant past than aliens have come from somewhere else to visit us, because of the great and vast distances that would have to be traveled. Keeping in mind, as we started out at the beginning, that little bit of information about the actual amount of time that it would take to get from the Oort cloud, the point where you would have to drop out of warp or reduce your speed below light speed so you could actually transit into the solar system without hitting something and destroying your vessel. That's 2 light years away from planet Earth. And traveling through the solar system means that you have to travel at less than light speed so you can see where you're going, so you don't hit a rock and you don't destroy yourself. Imagine making that distance, or that trip all the way from our solar system to another one. Maybe one of these days we'll do it. Maybe one of these days we'll do it, and not only will we do it, but that ship will turn around and come back. And now I want to know what the inhabitants of Earth are going to think whenever the thing returns. Would we remember that we sent it? Matthew's talking about acid. Oh, confession, I tried it once. And pretty much similar experience. They said it was acid. Everybody said that they were seeing stuff, and I just found it hard to get to sleep, and all my nerve endings hurt. But as far as being able to see things or stuff like that, no more than usual. No more than usual. Sunflower flower from the stalks of sunflowers, would it work with sunchokes, which are another Helianthus tuberosa, as opposed to Helianthus anus? It's a good question. good question. I don't know. Let me see. All right, Sassafras Red is leaving us because he's got to go to work tomorrow. Shoot, I have to go to work tomorrow too. Come to think of it, it's getting late, guys. 10 o'clock. Oh my gosh, 10 o'clock. No wonder I'm starting to get all fuzzy eyed. Well, guys, it's been a hoot. I'm going to call it a night. Remember, you don't have to fear the future. Well, at least not some of it. Still, you want to keep up your preparations. Make sure you're storing water. Oh shoot, that was what I was going to show you for a little lead-in video. And I walked outside earlier today. The blast heat hit me. It was like a furnace, and I said, "Nope, nope. I'm just going to stay inside and try not to melt." But I was going to show you a little video where this has nothing to do with that. A little video. We're filling these up. Boy. Sorry, this is an older one that's kind of dusty. I pulled it out of the box a while back. We got these rather large, and they're plastic Coleman chillers, 5 gallons each. We're getting ready to fill these guys up. We like to keep a little water on hand in the pantry. And I don't know how many of you guys do this, but when we first started prepping, way back when, around 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, we got the beans, we got the rice, we got the plastic wrap to cover the windows, we got the staple gun. I actually have more than one staple gun. I got a separate staple gun just so I could keep it with the plastic wrap in a preordained place, so that if I do ever need to go, oh shoot, flash on the horizon, hang on a second, okay, let's go out and put the plastic up around so that we can stop the radioactive dust from getting into the house. I don't know if that's ever going to work or not, but hey, we got all that stuff, and we got water in the 1 gallon plastic jugs. You can get these big boxes at Walmart or the dollar store or wherever you happen to go. Big boxes have 3 gallons of water in it. I know you've seen these before, right? We got those. We put them on the bottom shelves of the pantry. We could put about 15 gallons on one shelf, like 4-foot wide shelf. You put 5 of those 3 gallon boxes on the bottom shelf. There we go. Put those up there and said, okay, we've got water. I got salt. I got water. Got beans. Got rice. We got our stuff, right? And then as the years went by and emergencies never materialized, minor emergencies to show up, we'd have friends, family that fell into hard times and needed help, and having a stash of food and supplies and other stuff that we could give them was beneficial. It's like, okay, hey, look, I don't have any cash, but I've got 20 pounds of beans. Here's another 20 pounds of rice. You guys aren't going to starve. It's going to be boring, but you aren't going to starve. And they went, well, thank you very much. Incidentally, donating beans and rice from our stash is what allowed us to keep it fresh and usable up until the point where we started developing enough food production around here that we won't have to live on beans and rice anymore. Matter of fact, we'll only have to eat beans and rice if we feel like eating beans and rice, and don't always feel like eating beans and rice. But meanwhile, those plastic bottles at the bottom of the pantry shelf, little tiny thin 1 gallon plastic bottles, began to disintegrate over time. And eventually the plastic burst, the water drained out of them, made a mess on the floor, a little bit at a time, not all at once. But whenever we got in there and started looking at them, of all the gallons that were under there, I put in our kitchen, I put 30 gallons of water. We've got about 12 that survived longer than about 5 years. So storing water in the little tiny gallon jugs that it comes in whenever you go buy a bottle of water at the store, it's not going to work, not long term anyway. So I would recommend getting glass, but until you get enough glass that you can store it in glass, because glass will not transfer any chemicals to your water supply. But until then, you can get these, which hold about 5 gallons each. And so I was supposed to be filling these guys up and swapping out all of our old 1 gallon bottles from the pantry with this stuff. And that was what I was going to shoot a little video of today for sort of a lead in. But it's just too hot. I went outside and said, nope. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna just hit the sprinklers and then retreat back in here where the air conditioning is. It's too hot for little old me out there. I don't know what in the world I would do if we no longer had electricity and air conditioning. It gets just miserable out here on the prairie. Ron. Let's give you some chili peppers with the beans and rice, and it will not be boring. There you go. Get some chili peppers, get some onions, Egyptian walking onions, which we will have for sale next year. Excellent to go in there. Ron just had green enchiladas. Oof, yummy and tears. Yeah. Open the windows. Hope the wind will kick in. So many places are not built for people to live without electricity, without gas, without something to keep them warm in the winter, without something to keep them cool in the summer. These houses that we build for ourselves are not really well suited necessarily for the environments that we live in without the energy. This particular place, if we didn't have an ample supply of energy to keep it warm, then it gets very, very, very cold in the winter. No insulation in the walls, next to no insulation up on top. At this point, if we're going to put the insulation of the walls, we'd have to tear out the old walls, and there's no hope of salvaging the original material. So it really is about $20,000-$30,000 to insulate this house and make it properly insulated. It's just not realistic for it to happen. So at the moment, our plan is, if everything falls apart, we just retreat to the living room, and we've got a stove in here, and we can at least keep the living room warm during the winter. As far as keeping things cool, I just hope our trees grow a little bit faster. Yep. But yeah, definitely. Seasonings are important. Grow them. Grow garlic. Grow onions. If there's other seasonings that you can grow conveniently or easily where you're at, do so. Because, yeah, there's plenty of people stocking rice and beans. How many people are stocking an adequate supply of seasonings? Huh? And yeah, a lot of them do have medicinal properties as well. Anyway, guys, almost 2 hours. By golly, I'm going to go to sleep. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Don't fear the future. And if you found this video informative or entertaining, well, you know what to do. I'll catch you next time. But until then, get out there. By golly, better get growing. Oh, hang on real quick. Ron's asking a question. Best month here in Oklahoma to do that, probably about mid-October, October 15th or so. Right about the time you see the Pleiades. Or is it the Pleiades? Anyway, about the time you just start to see Orion appear above the horizon. Put the garlic in. We'll have enough warm days that it will begin to sprout. It'll begin to form roots all the way through the winter. It'll still live, and then come spring, it'll kick in, start growing, and then about the first week of July or so, it'll be ready to harvest. Anyway, that's it, guys. Bye. I'm out of here.